I live in 98 square feet. I went to great lengths to make it extremely insulated and airtight. Unfortunately, that brings other problems because I have severe asthma. I have ended up twice in the hospital for asthma attacks brought on by mold, mildew, furry creatures, pollen, things like that. And so it's very important to me to deal with condensation because condensation turns into mold and mildew, which turns into an asthma attack, which sends me to the hospital. And I don't want to ride in an ambulance to the hospital. I like living in it. So in part one, I'm going to show you 10 different ways of how I deal with condensation. And then in part two, we're going to look at dealing with mold, mildew, allergens, and how to avoid, identify, remove, and sanitize them. So let's get going on the list. Now the first thing you're going to need is a good thermometer with the humidity reading, and that has the high and low recording. I'll put links to all the gadgets down below. And what this is your scorecard. This is what you're going to use to monitor your progress on how well you're doing. So right now we're at 56% humidity inside and 68 degrees is the temperature inside, and you can see my highs and my lows. And so it's got down to 47 last night and up to 56 because I've been having the door open, so it jumped up. So today is doing really good, and I'm real happy with that. You don't want it. 75 is really the max you want to go, and try to keep it closer to 50%. So between 50 and 70 is decent. Once you get up to 80%, it's going to be wet inside. It's going to start being mold and mildew forming, and you're going to know that because your sheets and pillows are going to feel wet. Number 10, water leaks. Okay, that's pretty obvious, but really, most people don't take this seriously. I had a small little discoloration spot right up here in this corner. It wasn't bigger than maybe 2 inches by 3 inches. And if you have just a small spot on the ceiling, I can tell you this for a fact, you have a much, much bigger problem. It's probably, that's not where the problem's coming from. So I thought that right above that spot is a little light. So I thought that was the problem. But when it was all said and done, I had to take this ceiling panel down, I had to take this wall panel down, I had to take this wall panel down because the leak was not where I thought it was. So I thought the leak was right here, but as it turns out, it wasn't. When somebody had replaced those light bulbs and those running lights, so they had used a bigger screw, but it was also longer, so it couldn't completely close the gap between the seal and the bulb, seal and the light fixture, and so water came in. How I discovered that was just days of taking a hose on the roof and just shooting at different directions until I found out where the water was coming through. If you're getting a lot of water, it's going to be a big hole, and if you're having trouble, you're probably just not looking in the right place. If you have solar panels, the mounting brackets, the wires are going to be very suspect. So check those. And also your plumbing. So in mine, I check regularly for water leaks, both in the drain and the water lines in the pump. Another place people have a lot of problems is if they have a water tank, especially if it's inside, and that water tank, the water is dripping, but it's going under the tank where you can't see it, and it's causing rot and mold and mildew under the tank. Another place to check is windows. Now, I was having problems when I was laying on the other side of this window and having breathing problems, and when it was during demolition, I finally found this out. They cut the hole slightly, just ever so slightly too big, and there was a tiny, tiny hairline gap here, but you couldn't see it because inside the wall is black. So it wasn't until I took the inside wall down and I saw daylight coming from right here. So when I sealed this up, and it had been going on since it was brand new, this was black inside from here down. So that was just a small thing, but over a long time had developed into a big problem. So what causes condensation? Well, a lot of it is you're breathing, especially if you have two people. So the smaller the space, the more the people, the more you're exhaling moisture. Also, of course, cooking, anything that generates steam, hot water, and bathing are all going to generate and increase it. And that's one of the great things about your monitor is you can see in your daily routine of how that's going to go up and down. So number 9 is an electric space heater. This has been one of the single most useful things in reducing humidity inside. This I like is a coil heater type. It's very simple, it's very cheap. It's I think it's around $15. But this kind of electric heater, now you're gonna have to have access to shore power, but when you do, I run the electric heater, and this will bring my humidity level down from 70 to 45 in about 2 hours, because those coils just burn out the humidity in the air. Now some other ones don't do as well. I think the radiant ones do pretty good, but I don't know about some of the others, like an oil-filled one doesn't. So look at your electric heater as a way to bring down your humidity. So number 8, so now you're using your propane heater. Well, propane, part of the combustion process is that it produces water vapor. Even though I'm in a small space, I have a very large propane heater. It's 10,000 BTU. I'll make a whole video about this someday, but I've been able to interface it into the Digitin thermostat, and I've been able to control this beast and to make it be perfect temperature control thermostatically with propane. But this was the smallest heater I could find where I could have a pilot light and a thermostat. So this works great for me. However, we're producing moisture. So number 8 being smart ventilation is a lot of people ventilate it through the ceiling. So they'll have a fantastic vent and they'll vent to the ceiling, which unfortunately puts out your hottest air. Now in my case, I don't know about yours, but in my case, all my moisture tends to form at the bottom of the walls, down along the baseboards. Right here, you can see the moisture. I have a board that goes here that covers my step cover, and so my moisture all seems to form down low. So what I've done is I ventilate. I put a small fan down here in my floor, which I can use to ventilate here. So that's taking my cold, wet air and ventilating it. And also, I know there's a lot of arguments, and we'll go over it when I do the video on the heater, but carbon dioxide is 3 molecules, oxygen is 2, so carbon dioxide falls to the floor, and that's why they have the oxygen depletion sensor in these way down low. So I'm ventilating cold, wet carbon dioxide, and in practice this works extremely well. So number 7 is bedding. This becomes a very big factor, especially if you have asthma. When you lay down and your heart rate slows down, your breathing slows down, that's when an asthma attack can happen. So bedding is extremely important. Now where I messed up is I had a blanket. So I sleep on this sofa, and underneath my cushions, I do have a polyester material underneath here, and I do have a little pad. But what I did was I folded up a blanket to try to raise up this middle part of the sofa, and it was basically a cotton polyester blend. And I was having trouble breathing at night, and it turned out that that blanket, when I went under there and felt it, was wet. So it was holding water, and that was becoming a big issue. So you have to be careful how you make your bedding. Now, in some cases, people drill holes if it's on a board to let the air flow. In my case, the way the sofa is built, it's getting pretty decent, but I can't put anything under it, so it's something I have to constantly monitor. So number 6 is floor airflow. This is really important. You may have noticed that when you place things up against the wall, and they've been there a long time, and then you pull them from away from the wall, you'll see mildew and mold built up behind that. So you don't want things up against the wall, especially soft fabric. So my sofa can be a bit of a problem, so I've made sure that there's a little gap always between the sofa and the wall. But even then, that's not quite enough. So you really want to go around here to your baseboards and your floor and check out and feel and watch for moisture buildup, and make sure you don't pile things up against here. If you have a closet up against an exterior wall, stick your hand back there and feel, is that building up? If you've got blankets or other things up against the wall, you might find some moisture, dampness, and some scary things. All right, number 5 is soft fabrics. This is very you want to really avoid or really scrutinize your soft fabrics. I had a great big insulated curtain up here that I had to take down for the winter. I wanted to use it this winter, but it was so thick, even though it was polyester, it was drawing in moisture down at the bottom part and collecting it, and I actually started to have a smell. So what I did is I got a very lightweight polyester blanket, and even though it doesn't provide a great deal of insulation, it dries extremely quickly. So in the morning, I sometimes get a little bit of water across the bottom, but when I get up, I pull the curtain across and set it the bottom over here, and it dries within just moments. But so what you want, and this is, I think this is all polyester, so look for your materials. You don't want to go with cotton. You want to go with polyester for your curtains and for your bedding and any kind of soft material. So analyze all the soft fabrics you have. Metal surfaces particularly tend to draw moisture and can be a big problem. So give scrutiny to those, and I'll show you where I really have my worst problems with condensation on metal. Now, one of the benefits of an ambulance conversion is everything is made of aluminum, but that can actually be a drawback because this big metal plate here works as a heat sink, and it takes the heat into that metal, runs it through the frame, and exposes it to the cold outside. This also draws moisture into it. As you can see, I still have a little issue there. So what I have found that helps a lot, and this metal stays extremely cold, is I just took a layer of Reflectix, and I have just velcroed it. That still leaves an air gap here where a little bit of air can flow, and I check it behind it every once in a while. But this has been a great deal of help, because before this, in the morning, all the metal was just completely soaking wet and running, and this has really reduced it a lot. So this has worked out well. So number 3 is just really important and logical. Air the thing out. Now today outside it is only 51 degrees. However, it's the leaves are off the trees, so the sun can beat down. I'm getting straight sunlight, so it's actually pretty comfortable. So I'll open up the doors and air it out for several hours. Now number 2 I call smart fans. Now these aren't app control fans, but this is using fans smartly. Use it with reduced energy control and put it where it's needed to circulate the air. Over here I don't have a fantastic vent and I don't want to cut one in, so I've taken an O2 Cool fan, which is very inexpensive, and I have wired that into a 12-volt plug so I don't have to fill it full of batteries. I've also put in the speed control switch, and I'll put the link down there. It's very easy to install. It's not scary. There's just 4 little screws. You do the plus and minus coming in, and the plus and minus go into the motor. If this is something you're really interested in, I can make a video of how I did this. But this is a great fan because it's big, it moves a lot of air, it has small blades, and so it doesn't make a lot of noise, but it runs too fast. On its standard setting, it has a low and a high, and even on the low, it just makes too much noise and moves too much air. So this is a fan control, and I can take this down to just the slightest little air movement. Now what I did is I made a mount. It already comes this way. So now one of my biggest problems is down here behind the sofa where it's pretty close, and I have a metal bin door. So what I wanted to do is I've put a screen on here, and at night when the door's closed, I aim this straight down, and this puts air down where I have a problem here near the doors, the 2 doors, because here's my rear door and there's my side bin, and then my sofa. So this is an area I have to really keep track of. Now one thing I did was I made a cool little mount here. It's a very good mount. It stays on quite well. But I can take my fan, and I can hang it in this direction and blow air out. I can hang it in this direction and blow air in, blow air to the ceiling, blow air to the floor. I can even hang it on an angle and go up and down with it. It's basically 3 screws and some holes in the back. So something very simple that I've made very effective, and this is allowing me really mostly right now in winter to control the moisture problems. I'm circulating my air from the hot air and the hot dryer in the ceiling down to the cold air, wet air down below the sofa, in the corner and in the walls. Here having a nice day, I've got it hung and aimed out on high. And this is my bin area where I've had a little bit of issues, but it's gotten a lot better. See, my sofa comes right up against here. I've still allowed air circulation space on both sides, and I've cut out the fabric to even help it circulate this way, and all that has helped. So I only get just a very little bit of condensation on this bin right here. So number 1, and if you're a subscriber, you know all about this, my 5-layer hyper insulated window inserts. They're probably the biggest thing that has really made my experience warmer, but it also really reduces condensation. So here I have one right here in the window. They're so tight fitting and insulated that it really reduces the condensation. Now, not 100%, but greatly reduces it. Now I've got 2 sets of these videos, and I'll link them right here above and then at the bottom. One set is if you have these square windows here, that'd be for a cabin, for an RV, and that one will help you build the square ones. Now if you have a car or an RV or a van with odd-shaped windows, there's another set that'll show you how to make a customized pattern to do this. But basically they just pull right out every morning. I set it aside, and you can see here there was just a little bit of condensation right here in the window, and actually the water is outside of where I had it. So it went up to about here. So this is the water, which is coming from at the top of my door, which I haven't quite worked that completely out yet. There's some metal piece up under here. So working on that. This is the end of part 1, which is the condensation. But we're going to do part 2, which is some really serious stuff that can cause illness and sickness. We're going to avoid, identify, remove, and sanitize in part 2.